right? So you've been pulled over. Somehow he's gotten wind there might be a weapon in your car, and you say, yes, there's a firearm in my center console, but it's in a locked safe. And he says, I'm going to need to get that out. And you say, pound sand. It's in a locked safe. I'm not touching it. What happens? Well, we are the arms attorneys. Today we are talking about what happens if you have a pistol in a locked safe in your vehicle and a police officer demands access. Stick around. We're going to talk about how you should behave in these interactions, what you legally have to say and don't have to say, and what is the Fourth Amendment and what are the exceptions to the warrant requirement. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And we got to start this one with some caveats. Okay, there's a lot going on here. And you're going to see, all right, we have our Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, all the states, it's been selectively incorporated by the 14th Amendment. All these courts all over the country have done all kinds of crazy things. So please, be forewarned, take this stuff with a grain of salt because your state's law may vary. This one is a little bit more extreme than usual. We always say caveats, 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 but this one is a big caveat.
Yeah, so, bear in mind, right, we have the Fourth Amendment. We have U.S. Supreme Court case law interpreting the Fourth Amendment, and by interpreting I mean kicking the guts out of it.
Kicking the guts.
But your state, your highest state court is going to have touched this issue when it comes to state law, and there are going to be very specific things. And I know you say, well, how can states modify the Constitution and how can it be different throughout the country? Just to give you an example, like Texas very specifically has a period of time for which it is constitutionally reasonable to wait for a drug dog.
Yeah.
That is Texas specific. Texas has touched that. It only affects Texas. And there's little ticky-tacky things like that in your states too. So caveats, caveats, caveats. There are lots of variability here, but there's also some good federal law to talk about.
Yeah, and I will say the other kind of thing, we're making a couple of assumptions here. The person's lawfully allowed to possess the firearm. The firearm's legal in the state that you're in. So this is apart from all the kind of gun issues, possession, legality of the characteristics of the firearm. Really what we're talking about is, hey, and we got this question on Twitter, on X, and I really, really thought it was interesting. This guy has a locking safe in his center console, and the question is, all right, I get pulled over by the police. I let them know that I have a gun, and we'll talk about, there's a few different paths we go down here. Do I have to open up this safe? Do they have to break into this safe? What's my expectation of privacy? What are all the things associated with this? And we had a lot of fun talking about it.
We did. Not only because, did you know that my last car came with that option?
What?
To have a safe in the center console?
Your rocket ship car?
My current car, my mom car.
Oh, okay.
But the safe option did not come in the same package as little TV screens for the kids in the back.
Sure.
So it gave me a cooler instead, which my husband and I were both like, we want the safe because we want to put the gun in it. But I will say keeping the juice and the PB&J's cold is a really nice feature.
Sure. Okay.
So, sidebar.
Yeah, big sidebar. All right, let's go back to this. Cop pulls you over. Kind of the first consideration I'll say is, does your state have a duty to notify law enforcement that you're carrying? Now, again, state law is different here. Texas, we have a duty to notify that I'm a license holder, but not that necessarily you're carrying. A lot of states say, hey, upon first contact, you got to let them know you got a gun.
Right. So I will say, and this is, again, if you are a license holder, you may have a duty there that is separate and apart. But if your state doesn't make you divulge the presence of a gun, just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. It complicates the interaction. Nothing is gained. One cop out of 50 is going to give you like points for honesty, and the other ones are going to find a reason to put you through the paces for it. So don't do it.
Yeah, and you'll hear, all right, the pros to this, all right, obviously we want to be honest with law enforcement. We don't want to hide the ball.
And you should not lie.
Yeah,
that is against the law.
Yeah, we don't want to lie to them. But obviously we want to leave the transaction safely. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And so guess what? All right, so I see arguments on that side. Does this make the interaction more safe? I'll say in some interactions, yes. So there's a little bit here, but...
No, but look, if an officer pulls me over,
right,
I am not going to affirmatively disclose the presence of a gun
I'm not
unless
either.
he asks me. But just the same way, like,
right.
I'm not going to be like, ooh, I know you caught me for speeding, but I ran a red light a mile back. I'm not going to disclose that either.
No.
Keep your mouth shut.
No. All right, so I agree. Even though I was talking about a hypothetical pros situation. I'm not going to disclose it. Not legally required to disclose it. I'm probably not going to disclose it. But, all right, we have cop here. We have gun in safe. Does your state require a duty to disclose? That kind of does guide the direction that these things go.
For sure. Or even if it doesn't, right? Let's
Right.
say you've got six, like you've got like the gun family
Sure.
on the back of your, I love those stickers,
Yeah.
on the back of your truck, or you've got something that cues, you've got a license to carry, right? You've got something that cues him to say, any firearms in the car? Well, then what do you do?
Well, I mean, I don't answer any questions from law enforcement, or if you are going to say something, it should be the truth.
Right. So at that point, you can just refuse to answer, and the interaction will play out the way it's going to play out. Some officers are going to be respectful of that and maybe just ask you to stand outside the car for the rest of the interaction. Many are going to find a reason to screw with you. So just be prepared. But if you disclose it, what's the next thing that happens? Yes, officer, I have a pistol in my center console. My center console is a safe and it is locked. Well, the likely next thing he's going to ask you.
Well, I'll say 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, all right, just don't reach in that area. Let me go write your ticket or your warning or whatever.
That is true. That is what
But
always
for that
happens to me.
remaining period of time or those remaining situations, they're going to ask you to get out of the car.
Yeah, they're going to say, give me the gun. Because most states give the officer the right to lawfully disarm you for a short period of time during your interaction. For example, in Texas, they can do that for officer safety, for your safety, or for the safety of the general public, which means everything. It means anything they want it to mean. They may disarm you, but they shall return it. But they are probably going to take it. They're going to run the serial number. They're going to see if it dings up lost and stolen. So
Yeah, and these states that maybe they don't have something written on the books, we have United States Supreme Court case saying, hey, for officer safety, police officers can temporarily disarm folks.
yes.
During assuming they have reasonable suspicion to conduct a stop, to conduct an investigation, all those things aside, if they go beyond the limits of what they're authorized to do, maybe that excludes some evidence at trial. Maybe they legally obtain some evidence. We can have that fight in court. But we see, all right, generally, yeah, that exists. Now, what makes this a little bit complicated is, unlike a gun sitting in an unlocked center console, glove box, or maybe a briefcase, backpack, this is a locked container, and I know a lot of folks are going to say, whoa, hold your horses there. You want me to type in the code or give the code to the cops so that they can access this?
Right. So let's keep going down our story here, right? So you've been pulled over. Somehow he's gotten wind there might be a weapon in your car, and you say, yes, there's a firearm in my center console, but it's in a locked safe. And he says, I'm going to need to get that out. And you say, pound sand. It's in a locked safe. I'm not touching it. What happens? Well, I think that you have first of all, a pissed off cop who's going to be like, I have the legal right to disarm you. And you're going to be like, come and take it. And then something is going to play out on the side of the road. That something very likely invokes the Fourth Amendment, invokes the exceptions to the warrant requirement. Now, there are, I guess, two really big exceptions that I think are at play here. There is our general automobile exception, which comes from a case called Carroll. The Carroll case says that as long as a police officer can articulate probable cause, there is built-in exigency in your vehicle because you could just drive it off and dispose of any evidence of a crime. So as long as they can articulate probable cause that there is evidence of a crime in your vehicle, they get to search it without a warrant. And yes, that includes locked containers. However, if I just have a license and the pistol is there, do they have evidence that I'm committing a crime? I don't think so.
That sounds like an absence of probable cause. But this is something that we couldn't find an answer to. We spent some time researching this. Is the temporary disarmament for officer safety, does failure to comply with that give rise to probable cause of some other offense? I don't know. Probably not, based on the circumstances that we described, just because the officer can effectuate that some other way. They can tell you step out of the car and step away from the area. And look, officer safety accomplished. We don't need to go rip open this person's glove box. But in the presence of probable cause, all right, how does this normally come up? Plain view, I see drugs sitting in the car. They have a drug dog detect this. Maybe you have an outstanding warrant for your arrest. We'll talk about another exception to that. Let's say they identify a fictitious document, or a fictitious marking on your car. Like, okay, yeah, they have probable cause something is going on. It kind of makes the whole vehicle And we don't think it should be this way, but it's kind of makes the whole vehicle susceptible to search.
Yeah, the only warrant requirements, and of course this is the state of Texas, that I can think of for the vehicle are they have to have a warrant to search in your door wells, to like take your doors apart.
Okay.
And they have to have a warrant to put a GPS on your car. That's the only thing I can think of. And there may be a couple other ticky-tacky ones out there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, car, Wild West. If they have probable cause that you're committing a crime, if the only thing you're doing is refusing to give them access, I mean, there are probably some states where that might ding your handgun license. There's some sort of non-cooperative issue, I guess.
Or like if you have one of those states where you have a duty to notify,
Yeah.
you didn't notify, and you have a gun, well,
Right.
maybe they've created that situation of probable cause for purposes of accessing that under the vehicle exception. So, I mean, you see how dynamic this thing is?
Right. Plus, like, let's say they don't have probable cause. They break into your safe anyway. No crime has been committed. Well, what's your remedy?
Right.
Nothing. I mean, you can try to sue the law enforcement agency in tort, but you're not going to win. You just have to pay to replace your safe that they've broken into. And because you didn't get charged with a crime, there's no remedy because your normal remedy is exclusion of evidence. There's no evidence because there's no crime. You are stuck. Now, I'll tell you how I think it plays out, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, you refuse. They arrest you. They're either going to arrest you for the underlying traffic offense, which, like in Texas, if you run a stop sign, you can be arrested. You can be arrested for everything except open container and speeding. So, oddly enough, so they arrest you, or you refuse to cooperate. They arrest you for interfering with the investigator, right? Interfering with a police
Public duties
with
or-
public duties.
yeah.
Yeah, that thing they tried to arrest me for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they arrest you for that, and then what happens when they arrest you?
So we have a different exception to the warrant requirement, which is search incident to arrest. That's our wingspan rule. Potentially an inventory.
That's my go-to.
Yeah. So
Everything is legal as an inventory.
So an inventory is, all right, the police have taken custody of you. They're not just going to leave this vehicle on the side of the road with all of its valuables. They're going to tow it to a car lot. But in order to make sure you don't come back later and say, I had $1 million in the trunk of the car, they're going to search the car for valuable personal property, document that, write it in an inventory. And oh my gosh, if we discovered a crime along the way, guess what? You got that extra crime.
They get extra crimes in inventory all the time. So that is practically, I think, how this is going to play out. But this was such a fascinating question that we were given.
Well,
so,
and it sounds like we're all down in the dumps, like, oh, these console safes are completely useless. I don't think they're useless.
No.
I think they're very, very important.
they're going to keep people from stealing your gun.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of pessimistic. Oh, the cops can get it this way. The cops can get it this way. You're going to hurt yourself. But I'll say there's two things going for it. One, yes, you're not going to get your gun stolen. Hopefully, if these smash and grab burglaries, all right, that's great. Two, I do think there's a good argument for a heightened expectation of privacy, and that's really what the Fourth Amendment hinges around. Do you have an expectation of privacy in this person paper thing effect? And this safe manifests that additional expectation of privacy, and I think there are additional arguments there. Maybe they don't win, maybe they do, but I think there's some good arguments there for trial suppression issues, illegally collected evidence issues. So I don't think it's all a wash.
No, plus, like, think about the drunk drivers in Texas who get charged with DWI and UCW because there was a gun in the car.
Yeah.
I'd much rather fight that UCW if the gun was in a safe.
Yeah, I
Much
think
rather
so.
fight that. I got more options to argue. So, there are things.
Yeah, but we see there's a lot here. Again, lots of caveats, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please question and comment for us below. Until next time, we're the arms attorneys.